We are live.
Even making the kiss was just it ain't working. Too late.
All right, all right, all right.
My uncle had a kid, 50, I think, but now he's gonna be 80 or 27 graduating college.
One of my bosses just had twins. He got 30-year-old. He got 2 months.
That's the like worst thing I can imagine is to be like 23 and have like a baby.
He's like 50.
I know, but I like don't even want to be like a 23-year-old with a baby sibling. That sounds crazy. I don't want that. I mean, on my hands, like.
He got some.
Right.
Instead of 12.
How do you think that feels to be that like older brother where you're like, my niece and nephew, like,
He got a young one. She was. They've been married for like 7 years. She was. That's your 15-year-old.
To read out. Nope. You could, if you could even get it, we could do it at the end. All right, it's working now. I had to make sure I had my screens extended. Okay. Minimize that. Minimize that. All right. It says we are sharing the screen. So.
Yeah, everywhere. Good. That's a good thing. We have sticky notes for you. Stuff up. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Wait, were you?
Yes. Okay. All right.
Thanks everyone for your patience. We get started. I want everybody to know that we are streaming this event so that people can watch online. And we hope people are watching online. Of course, if they're not watching now, they will live online later. So thank you for coming. I asked Nick to say a few words at the start tonight.
Yeah, so thank you everybody for coming. I think that the best department plan and master planning event has been very great and successful. Having so many people out in our community come out and show their perspective of how they want Benton to look in the future, the revitalization of Ox Creek and all these different plans that are pretty much able to build the city and have the city put an input in something that's very great and something that is awesome to see. Like here, me right here, this is my first time being a part of something like this and see all the great things and learning so much from these great people about what McKenna and all the planning that they're doing. So it's something great and it's awesome to see our community come together. So
Thank you, Nick. I appreciate it.
thank you.
And so what we're doing tonight is we are finishing planning week, but we're kicking off our planning year. This is the launch event for the work that we're going to be doing over the course of the next year to develop a master plan, work with communities, continue our partnership with the Ox Creek team as they do their work to create a vision for Ox Creek, and continue to work with residents on important projects that need to be implemented soon. So we're going to share a report back tonight of all the great ideas that were shared, some of the work that was done. And really, this is the start of us working on these ideas, continuing to share these ideas, plan neighborhood events over the course of the next year. Just a quick reminder to everyone that's participating, you can go to bestbenharbor.com to find videos of all of the events that we've done this week, to see the presentations that each of our presenters have shared, and to learn about these projects as we continue to develop recommendations with the Benton Harbor community. And the first person who's going to talk tonight is Todd Shern. Todd is a PhD teacher at Howard University, University of Michigan liaison, and we would like to welcome here. Oh, I should also say Benton Harbor High School graduate, 1978. And he's going to share with us his presentation. Who are they today, the city today, and the city tomorrow?
So I guess if I look in this camera, then people that are streaming can see me.
That's right.
But
I kind of cheat a little bit when I can, do a little bit of this,
okay.
moving around. The reason why we're showing this way, though, is that so everyone can see the whole room.
Okay. Oh, yeah. But I probably need to be just right over here so they can see.
Yeah, something like that.
Okay.
And, you know, occasionally glance over, you'll be able to see.
Okay. Hello, everyone out there. And then also for folks who are looking on later, then I guess they'll be able to see me too. Although I am kind of dark, so just make sure you brighten up a little bit. All right. So hello, everyone. I'm Todd Shern. I'm a local Benton Harbor person. And so what I really want to try to do is bring some context to all this discussion. People are always saying what they are doing and they want this for us, and this is not what we want. And so what really it's about is what we want, right? So we are that, right? So whatever happens, not just in the planning process itself, but in the execution, it's a function of what we do. And so we are there is kind of the theme. The other theme that you'll kind of hear from me is that it's okay to make a buck, right? Civic capitalism is good, right? Because you have folks that have nonprofits, but in order for a nonprofit to be successful, it has to be a donor, it has to be a philanthropist. So if some of you want to make the buck using or leveraging this master plan and then contribute to one of the charitable causes, you're more than welcome to. And so we just want to keep folks in that perspective that making a buck is good, particularly if it's civically minded. So do I just
Hit the space bar.
hit the space bar? Okay. Okay, so one of the things that I just wanted to just glance over briefly is the demographic trends. And these have been discussed during the week, so I'm not gonna harbor much, but one of the key things that we see is just the overall population decline in Benton Harbor. We were down, almost 50%. And so the infrastructure could obviously support many more people than we have. So one of the issues that people raise is, why are we focusing on, external people when we really need to help these people who are here? And so that's absolutely true. But one of the ways that we can help the people who are here is by empowerment, by providing jobs, by providing possibility of income beyond what they currently are able to produce on their own. And so that's really the context of my remarks is empowerment, but empowerment through income that we produce, right? So, you've seen these numbers before and they'll be out there. So one of the things that you see is the discrepancy or the difference between the household income in Benton Harbor and St. Joe. And so our goal is not to lower the household income in St. Joe, it's to raise the household income of Benton Harbor. And that's what we're trying to do. And so you can kind of see it again, all right? So there's other regions of the state in particular, although Michigan City is in Indiana, it's got our name, but it's in Indiana. And one of the things that we have to keep in mind about, and this is mainly for the citizens and residents, is that both the state and the feds have responsibility for everyone. So when we put this big wish list out there, the state and the feds aren't going to be able to deliver on that in its entirety because they have the responsibility for these other areas as well. So we have to keep in mind that there's also going to have to be a significant amount of private capital that makes these things occur. And so we want to try to create the kind of climate that will secure that private capital, that investors will say, hey, let's come and invest in Benton Harbor. We got this wonderful master plan that kind of gives us a framework for how an investment could provide return. And so let's do that. And so, I mean, from a purely competitive point of view, we want to have, obviously the most enticing master plan, but it also should provide investors with the comfort that they can get real return from Benton Harbor that they can't get elsewhere. And so one of the arguments that has been made is, yes, we are a distressed city, and yes, there's been institutional racism and discrimination, and that's what has led to us being in this position. But there are many other cities in the US that can make that exact same argument. So we can make the argument, and we got to do more than that, right? And so that's kind of the essence of the remarks. And you can see this comparison to other regions. And kind of, Flint is bigger, but it has many of the same issues. And I also put Pontiac on the list. It has many of the same issues. And then, as you know, everybody knows from here, Gary, Indiana has many of the same issues. So we kind of went through this stuff before. Benton Harbor has infrastructure for twice its population. Some of the same characteristics as these other cities, and even has a downtown area that's comparable to Grand Rapids and Kalamazoo. One thing that is notable, and I'll discuss a little bit more, is that our rail infrastructure has been dismantled for really old head Benton Harbor people. You'll remember when Whirlpool did manufacturing here and Auto Specialty did manufacturing here, there was a railhead that was accessible to those factories. So they were actually able to take manufactured goods and drop them right on flat car railroad bed and get them out of here, right? Now we don't have that possibility. We have no rail infrastructure for manufacturing. So the notion that we're going to manufacture at scale or any kind of heavy manufacturing, that ship has sailed. Benton Harbor is well positioned for growth. There's a lot of potential. You kind of see that although we've kind of kicked the rail infrastructure to the curb, we still have retained some of the commercial shipping infrastructure. And you see that with the big piles down at the docks, all right? So we're not totally into the leisure space. We still have some industrial activity. And so in the shipping area, we do. And so we want to be able to leverage that. But there are a lot of other assets that the city has. And just wanted to bring this analogy that was referenced yesterday, just kind of bring that back into consciousness. In technology, we call it being disruptive. But in this case, it was the analogy was really around looking at music from a different perspective, right? So it was he took like basically a circle of fifths and condensed it to a circle of fourths and provided some great insight to make outstanding music. And so that's what we really want to do here. We want to look at some ways that we can take the assets that we have and look at it in a different way and create value going forward. And so these assets that we have, and there are some that are probably missing, but certainly, Lake Michigan is asset number one, right? And when you look at the list that people put forward, and I'll show it, is that list could be compiled for any of those cities that I show. From the distress, it could be compiled from Gary, from Jackson, from Greenville, Mississippi. And so what we really want to do is we want those things, but we want to position it in ways that are uniquely Benton Harbor and utilize the assets that we have. And so, you see the assets. I mean, it's very clear. St. Joe and Paw Paw River, Ox Creek, we've been discussing that, and we're going to discuss it in more detail over the next year because it is such a great asset and it's underdeveloped. And that's an asset that Gary doesn't have, that Muskogee, Oklahoma doesn't have. And so we really want to try to maximize these assets that make us unique. And that's what will attract not only private investors, but even the feds, right? Because the feds want to, just like anyone else, they want to invest in things that they believe will be successful. Local agriculture, tremendous. I don't know how many of you guys take advantage of that, but we have a great local agriculture economy and industry. And so we really want to leverage that. People have talked about restaurants. So if you have restaurants that specialize in using local foods, then that could be an attraction beyond just, a simple, here we are today, gone tomorrow. No, this is something that is sustainable. Whirlpool headquarters are here, right? So a lot of people, and I always use the analogy, some people in Benton Harbor, they're like, well, what does Whirlpool have to do with me? And I don't care about Whirlpool, and who cares? What is Whirlpool? So I say, I don't know if you guys have ever been to Columbus, Ohio. Has anybody been to Columbus? All right. So almost everybody in Columbus is a fan of who? The Bucks, right? The Buckeyes. I mean, you hardly ever go to Columbus, and like even people from Michigan who have moved to Ohio and live in Columbus, like I know people from Benton Harbor that live in Columbus, and now when they play Michigan, they're like, yeah, but go Bucks. I'm for the Bucks, right? And so they're for the Bucks. I mean, that's like crazy. Everybody in Columbus for the Bucks, and so that's the way we need to be with Whirlpool. Whirlpool is here. Whirlpool has done a lot for this community, and so we need to embrace Whirlpool and make sure that Whirlpool remains the world's leading manufacturing company, right? Now, it is now, but we need to make sure that it remains because of our effort, because of our support, because of our energy, things that we've contributed. Chicago proximity. I mean, some people kind of look at that and they have some disdain because they say, all these Illinois people coming here. All right, I admit they drive kind of fast. They don't obey our rules. Okay, they can be somewhat obnoxious, and we have a nickname, Phipps, that fits them. Okay, but there is a lot of value in that. All right, the Jack Nicklaus Signature Golf Course, Harbor Shores, that gives us credibility, right? Because now people recognize that this community has assets and value that people are willing to invest hundreds of millions of dollars to pursue and advance because someone else has already done that, right? If you are trying to convince someone to invest tens of millions of dollars or something, one of the best ways of doing it is to be able to show that other people have invested tens of millions of dollars in the community. And so that Jack Nicklaus Golf Course certainly does that. And then the snow, right? So one of the things is about the master plan and what we want to think about is that the Benton Harbor has weather that goes beyond just the 3 months of the summer. So whether it's Hall Park, whether it's Ox Creek, whether it's a walkway down Empire, we always want to consider, all right, how does this overlay in the winter, in January, right? What about this would be attractive even in January? Because we always want people to get out and spend their money in Benton Harbor. So it's not just a 3-month economy, but it's a 12-month economy. And the thing that snow does is it gives us a leg up on both Chicago and Detroit because we get basically twice as much snow as either of them. When I went to Ann Arbor, when I was in college, I left Benton Harbor, I was just amazed at the lack of snow that they got. I mean, I thought it was like Benton Harbor, and I guess some of you guys from the east side of the state, it's like, I was like, wow, I mean, does it even snow here? Okay, and they get like a little bit of snow, they're like, oh, this is snow. I'm like, no, that's not snow. I'll show you what snow is, right? And so we have to leverage that, and as you guys know here, I mean, a lot of times there's not even snow in Chicago, when there's like all this snow here and nothing in Chicago. And so we want to be in a position where we are leveraging what snow can provide and the activities that snow can provide. And people say, okay, well, I don't cross country ski, or I don't have snowshoes, or I don't okay, but that's not the issue. What you can do is you can be a snowshoe vendor, or you can be a ski vendor, or you can actually rent equipment for traversing the snow. So you don't necessarily, and this is related to Benton Harbor residents, you don't necessarily have to be a snow person and get out in the snow. What was the title? Make a buck, right? Make a buck from the snow. Okay. Now Commissioner Henry's coming in, and so she's like the quintessential example of number 4 that I'm talking about. Commissioner Henry has been leveraging the local agriculture system, right? She's out there doing it. And it's very important. A lot of people don't even know that it exists, but she does. And she's always pushing it. And that's something that more people can do because, again, this is make a buck, right? There is so much opportunity in local agriculture. And then the last thing that I just want to mention, you can kind of see the value that the University of Michigan is providing, but we have Michigan State Extension, Western Michigan, Andrews University has a great architecture school. So we have a lot of resources in the area that can be leveraged for your ideas, for your concepts. All right, and these are just the numbers that I threw out, just so that we can kind of understand what the Chicago market is. All right, over 8 million people, $770 billion in GNP. That's more than Switzerland. Okay, so we just want a piece of that. With boats, there's $36 billion that was expended in 2014, and this is in private boating, right? And then for the year 2014, 350, this is all Chicago, right? 350 million just in new boats and accessories. And the number is greater than that. And then the household income expenditure in the Chicago metropolitan area is 5%. So if someone is making 100K, then they're spending 5,000 in just entertainment. And so what is it that we want to do here? We want people from Chicago to come over here and spend their money on our products and services and our local produce, and then take their butt back to Illinois and make some more money and come back again. Okay? So it's like, make your money in Illinois, come over here and spend it. Take it right on back to Illinois, make yourself some more money, and then we got something for you. All right. So that's what we want to do. We want to make sure that they come over and spend their money. And not only do we want them to spend their money in June, July, and August, but we want to spend their money in January when it's snowing here, right? When it's cold there, but they don't have snow. So we want to make sure that anytime someone from Illinois wants to spend money, we are here to take it. All right. Whirlpool speaks for itself. Largest employer in the county, $20 billion a year in sales, 1.5 billion in income. How can we leverage that? What ideas do we have that can make them more money and then make whoever's idea is going forward more money? I mean, because that's the whole idea is, again, remember, it's make a buck. That's the context of this talk. Make a buck for civic good, right? So you want to make a buck, and then you want to try to do some civic good with it, whether it's support one of our charitable organizations or a church or a school or whatever. But make a buck. If you don't make a buck, then you can't support these things. And so, we did the exercise about what folks wanted, and how do I go back?
Press the up arrow.
Okay, so the up arrow. All right, so these were just some of the things that kind of came out of the talks over the week that people wanted. So one thing that you have to consider when you look at these things is you want to always make sure that when we look at how we're going to implement them, that there's some Benton Harbor uniqueness, that there's a local flavor to it. Otherwise, when you look at this list, you don't know that this list is coming from Benton Harbor. It could come from anywhere. Jackson, Mississippi, East St. Louis, Illinois, Youngstown, Ohio, they have the same list. And so what we want to do is we want to make sure that there's some local element or some local twist that we bring to that list, again, so that these Illinois folks come over and spend their money. So we just ask ourselves, how can these things be monetized? And then what resources and skills are needed to construct and operate these entities, right? What do we need to do? And then finally, as individuals, what can I do to make it happen, right? Because that was the other part of the talk, we are they, right? It's not what they do, it's what we do, right? Because that's the only way any of this is gonna actually actualize. And so just kind of the continuation of the list of what people say that they want, but it's always asking that same question, right? And so I just kind of, again, remind you of the assets that we have that you want to keep in mind. And I just kind of, I'm throwing this out there because there is a possibility for a major investment. People have said like a field house, like a track field house with 8 lanes, 400-meter Olympic size track, right? Nothing in 5 states that are like it. And then here's some of the other ideas that could complement it. Someone was speaking about a skateboard park, right? Skateboard, BMX, Well, when you look at skateboard and BMX, that's great for the summer, but we also need to flip that and say, okay, in the winter, it could be snowboarding or ice skating, right? So we also want to look at the winter and summer projections of everything, all right? And so here is just some of the things that could go on year round at at a facility like this. And you can see that winter activities, summer activities, and in the winter indoor. So if you had this 408-lane, 400-meter track, folks could run when there's a snowstorm outside. It wouldn't impact it. But what else could you do? You could have a world-class soccer match in January that could be televised, all right? So all these things are possible, and so you want to make sure that you can leverage them and be able to actualize them in the context of the overall master plan for the city. And so, again, one of the themes is make a buck, and here are all the things that could kind of fall out of that, right? So in addition to, kind of sports and athletic types endeavors, I mean, one of the things we could do is offer massage, I wouldn't say powerless, but massage therapies is really, really popular. So like, I'm thinking like Oprah, doesn't Oprah have some massage spots? So we could holler at Oprah and see if Oprah would come over and open up something that was really tight here, right? Because people want to get out of the city, they want to get away. And so why can't Oprah open up something in Benton Harbor? She can, right? But it wouldn't be for Benton Harbor folks, although Benton Harbor folks would patronize it, it'd be for Benton Harbor folks to make a buck, right? For Benton Harbor folks to be a part of something that was paying taxes, okay? That could bring those Illinois people in, shake their money, and then send them on their way, all right? And so one of the areas, and this was what was discussed earlier today, is the riverfront, Riverview Drive. There's a ton of potential for what could be done there. And so this is just kind of speaking of that. And so one of the things that we might want to look at is, putting that BMX bicycle track there, and that would be in the summer. And then in the winter, it would be the skateboard, ice jumping, whatever. And one of the things that we can do, because we have excess water capacity, we can create artificial snow to light up your world, all right? There is almost no limit to the artificial snow that we could create in Benton Harbor, cheaply, all right? And so, again, these are kinds of things that we could offer that would be unique to Benton Harbor that investors would potentially support. And so this is just kind of outlining the possibilities, but again, it's kind of saying, if you build it, they'll come, which is true, all right? And then we have, I'm not a big Michigan State fan, and I'm not a Michigan State fan, and I'm not a fan of Notre Dame, but they're close, right? So this track facility, Notre Dame always likes to think of themselves as this national brand. So if we had this fabulous indoor track facility, Notre Dame could host relay events. They could host nationally televised track events, and they could be like, okay, we're Notre Dame and you're not, and blah, 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 all right? So that's what we want to be able to do. We want to be able to offer something to Notre Dame so that, again, they're willing to invest in the community. Casino, Four Winds has the license for this area, and they have casinos all over. So they might not want to open a casino in using the Four Winds brand, but what they might be open to is partnering with something like MGM or the Hyatt. So we could have the Lake Michigan Hyatt Regency Resort and Casino, all right? And so it would be a year-round resort. In the summer, we have summer activities, which would include golf and all those things associated with it. In the winter, it would include snow activities and some of the activities that would be around having an ice skating park or ice jumping park or a snowboarding event. And then there would be, the casino, which of its own right has value. It's a huge employer of Black people, right? So if you go and look at the casinos in Detroit, I mean, it's just an incredible number of Black people that work there. Same thing with MGM, National Harbor outside of UT, like more than 65% of the employees in that casino are Black. So if you're saying, all right, well, we want to do or create investments that Black people in Benton Harbor can work, the casino is A1. In fact, there's a lot of Black people in Benton Harbor that work at Four Winds casinos in South Bend, in New Buffalo, and in Hartford. So a casino is something that could potentially be of value, and they're building casinos everywhere. I know there's a lot of not even talk now, there's some probably under the table deals going on in Chicago for a casino. Well, people ask, like, with casinos everywhere, does that lessen the value of a casino? And it just hasn't. I mean, look what's going on with Las Vegas. With all the proliferation of casinos, you would think that would hurt Las Vegas's business, but it's actually helped it, right? So the fact that there's a proliferation of casinos would not limit what we could do with a casino. And as I said, you probably wouldn't be able to secure a casino with the Four Winds brand, but Four Winds would be more than willing to partner with an MGM, with a Hyatt, with a Marriott, with a Hilton to bring a major casino to Benton Harbor. And then the other thing is I mentioned too about like the massages and the spas, all right? These are all things that kind of fit in with this destination that people would gravitate to. I think that is it. And so we're back to Paul, but I just wanted to kind of set the stage so people keep in mind these things when we are discussing the possibilities, the assets that we have, the things that could make any investment in Benton Harbor unique, and that could attract folks from outside the community to the community who take their money and then they go back home, make some more money, and then they want to come again and spend it with us again. Thank you.
Thank you, Todd. I love asset-based planning. We've been talking about that since the beginning. I also love this idea of, you know, making a buck, right? And realizing that part of economic development is job creation, creating opportunities for entrepreneurship, and creating opportunities for people to benefit from investment. You know, we've learned through analysis, looking at this data, there are a lot of homeowners. There are a lot of people who might want to open homes, might want to open businesses, a lot of talent. And that's what this process is about. This process is about creating opportunity for the city to rise, and as the city rises, the region rises, the state rises, Chicagoland rises. Everybody rises when we talk about building the best Benton Harbor. And that's what we've been talking about. You know, we've done some analysis looking in the neighborhoods. We have spent a lot of time talking to neighborhood residents this week, going out, talking to store owners, walking around the neighborhoods, multiple trips around the neighborhoods with multiple times, in cars with people, getting personal tours, personal geographies, personal histories. And that's what we're going to continue to do over the course of the next year. We've talked about doing at least 4 neighborhood-based workshops and events to activate the neighborhood. We visited today the African American History Museum, and the owners of the African American History Museum are thinking that could be a good space too to do one of these workshops. And we're looking for more places to activate. We're going to continue to have those conversations throughout this process. But we'd like to report a little bit tonight about what we've learned working this week. In thinking about placemaking, there's some diagrams and some maps here, opportunities for more feedback. And we've done some analysis to create some initial recommendations. You know, this shows what is really the beginning of what I would think of as being a parks and boulevard system. That's kind of a Chicago-y term, or Indianapolis. But the idea, and this idea came from Commissioner Edwards, who spent so much time activating the parks. He was saying we need to have rotating events like he already does. Let's activate this park this Friday, activate this park this Friday, activate this park this Friday. And as he goes around, what he's doing is circling this park network in the city. And when you make those connections, this illustration here, what it shows is Broadway Park through to the high school. And then the other thing that we've been talking about is connecting the north and south sides of the city. Connecting across Main Street, connecting from downtown and the Arts District to the Riverside, through the Cannery District. All of this is illustrated on this plan. And the idea is that by revitalizing the neighborhoods, by connecting neighborhoods to these assets, to these resources, the whole community will lift. And we've been having this conversation around the idea of creating housing opportunities. And I think it's important that we talk a little bit about the economics of new housing. And what it is simply by owning a home, you get equity, you get value in your home, you get wealth, you build wealth through owning a home. There's another thing about middle housing, and what's interesting about it is when you have a duplex, when you have a triplex, when you have a quadplex, if you're a homeowner and you live in that home and own that property, you also get income. You get income from the properties that you rent to your family, your neighbors, your friends, other community members that need housing. And that income helps you support the property. So we talk about filling in different neighborhoods in the city that have vacant lots with housing opportunities. This is looking from above. Let's look a little bit at bird's eye. You've got those small apartment buildings, new single-family homes, bungalow courts, duplexes. Creating this housing creates wealth. It's a part of jobs for plumbers, jobs for electricians, jobs for builders. And then the people who own these properties gain wealth in owning them. They also gain income in renting them. Some people don't want to own a home. Well, we need places for people who rent too. And this strategy, if it's done right, will create opportunities for more Benton Harbor residents to own homes and to benefit from development. We've looked at, also related to new neighborhoods, creating new neighborhood centers, places for grocery stores, cafes, businesses, all the things that we've heard, the assets that Todd presented and the what people want. There need to be places for those too. And that's not just downtown. That's at places like Project T, where you'll have opportunities for new mixed development. And just say, if you don't know Project T, is we're looking at Pipestone and Empire here, right? It's the Mercy site, and right now it's vacant, and it's a beautiful site. When we look at what could happen there, we look at creating opportunities for new middle housing, creating opportunities on that corner to revitalize the park on that corner and provide views, provide new mixed-use housing. This is a neighborhood center, and cities must be polycentric, right? It's not about just having downtown. You need a place in your neighborhood you can walk to. Sometimes we call it the ice cream test, right? There needs to be a place in your neighborhood you go get an ice cream cone, and you need to be able to walk home before that ice cream cone melts. And that's how you know you live in a walkable neighborhood. If you get an ice cream cone, get back to your home before it melts. And these neighborhood centers, that's where you're going to get your ice cream, right? And right now, there are some good places, but they, there's nothing wrong with more. Looking from the street, looking from what that park could look like, looking out at that main street. A neighborhood center can have some of the character and build on the character of the beautiful structures in downtown. When we think about why are we talking about middle housing? We're talking about middle housing because there are a lot of vacant lots. The city actually owns a lot of them. The city is in control of 500 lots. If we look at redeveloping the 500 lots that just the city owns, that's $15 million per year in city tax revenue. And the other thing that we've heard is we want better city services, trash collection, new sidewalks, lighting, those types of things, and people, right? More people at the city to provide services. This type of revenue supports not only wealth building for Benton Harbor residents, it supports jobs for Benton Harbor residents to serve the community, and city resources with, this is a scrap in the bucket compared to the type of investment that could happen, but this is important. I want to reiterate to the point that the mayor has made several times this week, a goal of creating $500 million investment within 10 years. That's $50 million a year. And I actually think it could be more than that. We could be talking double that. But let's stick with 500 million from now. This housing strategy is a part of what will make that work, a big part of it. And I wanted to show this slide again too, because we are talking about ecology. We are talking about the water system and where that water system will continue to expand. This is the floodway. We know that storm events will be more frequent with climate change. And we also know that Michigan is a climate change winner. People will be looking to come to Benton Harbor and make their living and be a part of our beautiful resources, our economy. And the hill that exists in Benton Harbor, that is a hill that is safe from climate change. When we talk about reinvesting in, I know that there's more than just flooding, but there's a reason why this hill exists, okay? And my graphic on the right here, which I've shown many times, shows that there is value per acre. If you look at assessed value per acre, there is a lot more value in the neighborhoods now than people think, because they're smaller lots. Comparatively, Benton Harbor residents are paying their fair share of taxes, and they are valuable properties. This shows a little bit more of our design thinking. You know, we looked at the Wakanda site, how to put middle housing on the Wakanda site. We looked through the ideas of how do you create more opportunities for riverside housing, especially as Ox Creek is revitalized, how that middle housing could be designed so that everybody gets a view of the creek. Everybody gets to enjoy these resources. And, you know, this is all being brought together with this idea of a future land use plan. One of the things right now about the current future land use plan is it still calls out most of the city as single family, detached residential. And at the time when this was made, that was a good recommendation. And I don't want to necessarily say it was bad, but this is kind of in thinking with people about how the city should develop. We are talking about housing on the bluff, shown in the pink here. We're talking about let's stop thinking about single family residential. Let's start thinking about neighborhood residential, a mix of housing that supports neighborhoods. Let's think about city center as being bigger than we currently think about it. Let's talk about the Cannery District. Let's talk about connecting along the canal. Let's have future land use categories that support a connected parks and boulevard system. Let's have neighborhood centers too. Let's not leave out the fact that the neighborhoods need centers, and let's say the importance of Project T, the Empire and Broadway neighborhood, Britain and Pipestone. All of these neighborhoods need neighborhood centers, and you can see it. We can redo a future land use plan that shows the relationship between neighborhoods, the important needs for commercial services, and also utilizing the unique geographical features like the beautiful bluff that overlooks downtown, that you can see Lake Michigan from that bluff, and that's a place where new housing can be created. So we're trying to make the connection here by why simplifying some of the land use regulations, why organizing the land use regulations to support neighborhood development, and why neighborhood development and housing is an important part of creating economic opportunity in the city of Benton Harbor. And that's my presentation. I did want to say too, when we talk about middle housing, one of the things that the exhibits that we've made, we want to know about what types of streets Benton Harbor residents want to live on, and what type of houses Benton Harbor residents want to live in. And tomorrow, we will be going to Peace Day at Benton Harbor High School. We will be talking to high school students. It's the last day of the school, and we've created this exhibit so we can see what type of houses people want to live in, what type of streets people want to live on, and start that conversation, continue that conversation. And additionally, we made a lot of these flyers so people can take them with them and get feedback. And we continue this conversation about what type of housing people want to see in neighborhoods. And I was just talking about Peace Day, and I see my colleague, DeMonte walked in. Do you want to do a pitch now for what we're doing tomorrow?
Yeah.
Are you up for it? You want to introduce yourself?
So, hello everyone. I'm DeMonte. This is Brady. And so, born and raised here in Benton Harbor. I graduated Benton Harbor High School in 2011. So a lot of familiar faces in here. I guess it's good to see you. You're still here. Awesome. So I run a company called DanceWire. I grew up dancing in the community, and that field and that passion has turned into a business for me. And so I teach. I'm a professor at university. I do a lot of other things, but my company has come on as a partner to McKenna to kind of help with the community engagement side of this plan.
Hey, DeMonte, let's just pause with the chairs. I want people to be able to focus.
Okay. Yeah, sure. Sorry.
You know, we need the chairs. Let's bring the chairs in. Let's bring the chairs in, and we'll continue. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, 10 years ago, when I was in this community, I didn't know there was a plan going on, but actually we had a plan from my year when I graduated. So I'm very passionate about trying to find ways to really engage the community in ways that they see is fun, exciting. So we're gonna do a talent show competition. We have 4 categories. We're gonna give away $500 for each category. That's dance, that's music production, video production, and fine arts. We have judges from the community, and we're excited to do this. So we're gonna do like a texting platform. We'll let people submit. They'll be able to text the platform, and they'll get instructions, and they'll be able to submit for $500. This is their summer opportunity. So we're excited to try to engage artists in their content in the plan as well.
Thank you. Very exciting, and we're going to be talking about this tomorrow too at PSA, launching this competition with students. And next up are my colleagues Craig and Kay. We're going to talk a little bit about Ox Creek revitalization.
There you go. So yeah, this is a kind of weird. But thanks for coming out, everybody, and thanks for letting us participate and the master planning team and the efforts. We're working on Ox Creek specifically and looking at it as a study. This week we really kind of narrowed the focus just to Ox Creek within the city. We're tied together with the master plan, so looking specifically at the city. Although our charge is to look at it going all the way out to Napier, which is the township. But it is also important to know that you all own that land all the way out continuously in the township. But we bracketed our conversations over the last few days really to focus on a couple of sites within the city to really talk about how that might grow. I'm Craig Borum. We have a team. This is a kind of bit of the team. We're also in partnership with, been working with city administration. We've been working with state agencies, Eagle, EPA. We've been working with, we're all from University of Michigan. We've also been working with a couple of folks from Kansas State University, which has a specific program that's funded by the EPA that looks specifically at brownfields and helps technically with assistance of how to redevelop brownfields. And along Ox Creek, there are a number of those. So we've been tapping into their expertise to help us conceptualize how we move forward with those kinds of projects. And then most importantly for us, you guys are all our partners in this. We can't do this project without your input, without your participation, without your ideas that you've been so generous with this week. And for us, it's just a start. We're going to be back again and again and really try to build on the efforts and momentums. But this week was a great week for us to kind of tap into things. The city commission and the mayor have charged us with a resolution that they passed back in September to really focus on Ox Creek, both as a social amenity, but also an environmental one for the city. And we're looking at how to leverage those two extremes of the kind of the environmental condition of the creek, but also the position that it has. It stretches the entire length of the city from downtown, and again, all the way out through the township. And the creek and the watershed actually go well out into the past 94, and you're getting water from all the way out there that's coming through into the stream. But it has this incredible potential, I think, both for the health of the city, the quality of life, but also the potential to spur economic growth. And that's an important part of what we've been looking at all the way through. First, I just kind of covered that. But what is it? Where is it? Here it is. It's about, you can see Lake Michigan, the pawpaw here, that actually connects to the pawpaw. Right now, it's running through a kind of channelized system. We haven't been looking so much at that yet, because there's a whole set of complex issues surrounding that end of it. But we will hopefully expand the study out further. But really, we've been looking from about Main Street and down to Napier. And then again, this week, we've only been looking really kind of tightly at one stretch of it. But you can see the watershed and the creek and the one of the drains extends all the way out into the countryside. And there's the whole watershed. Here's the city, your city limits. And again, we've been kind of focusing about here. But you can see that whole shaded area is all the water that falls there from a rainstorm eventually works its way through that creek out to the pawpaw, out to Lake Michigan. So you can think about it as the city, but you have to think about it, I think, as an entire organism. And in order for the project to come forward, there's a couple of key components that have to happen, really to kind of to address both the environmental injustices that have happened over the years in terms of industrial misuse, in terms of neglect, in terms of how stormwater has been managed, and just overall maintenance of the creek. And many of you have shared amazing stories about what it was like when you were growing up, playing in it, crossing it, sledding in the middle of the winter down the hill into the ravine. Really, we want to bring that life back to the city. So the first part, we have to clean it up. It's really a mess. If you get down in there, the number of streets that into it, they really are kind of dumping sites. If you go on Valley Drive, really a kind of illicit dump has emerged there that really has to get handled. And I think when you clean that up, it'll be a pretty amazing aspect. We also have to work on the landscape around it that surrounds both sides, because that is the main filter that handles the stormwater that's moving through the ground, picking up deposits, picking up sediment and erosion, picking up trash, and putting it into the stream. And that's part of that's caused the degradation of the stream overall. So we'll work on strategies. We've been working with experts at Eagle. We'll be working with engineers, talking about what are the best approaches in terms of remediation, in terms of what practices we put in place to help it not come back once we begin to work on it. A big part of it runs right along the park that you own, Hall Park, really right in the center of the city. It's the family park, such a great space. It's a really beautiful park. The trees are majestic, and they're incredible old growth trees. The park has been damaged by the creek at this point. The banks have eroded away. All of the sediment that's been coming down, starting out in the farmland, coming through town, has really caused a kind of slow deposit and erosion of that sediment that's widened the creek, that's slowed down the movement of water. We have to work on that. We have to, it'll help prevent the flooding that's happening, the flooding that right now is kind of damaging the baseball diamond, it's affecting the park in a big way. So we're hoping to rebuild on all of that. And then the final component of our study is looking at an elevated, constructed, lighted, non-motorized trail that will go eventually connect you all the way out into the township and then all the way up to Lake Michigan.
I'm just gonna touch a little bit on the conversations that were held yesterday. I'm gonna share again that it was such an honor to meet with everybody who came out and wanted to share their narratives and their stories and their memories and really specific suggestions on how we can build a new future for the Ox Creek corridor. It was really quite magical to witness the really unstoppable and unwavering passion and energy from the people who came out. My hands were having so much trouble catching up with all the suggestions that were flying around the room. It was so amazing, and this was only scratching the surface of a much longer conversation that is to come. McKenna and their presentation kind of touched on some of the themes that were brought up and the very specific solutions that people were imagining around the creek. But we're imagining that these types of themes of, what people want, what sorts of amenities or like experiences do you think you can imagine around a creek? What sorts of events? What happens in Benton Harbor? All of the festivals, including things like Juneteenth or things that happen annually. All of these are going to inform the design and the process around the Ox Creek revitalization. We have to think about who's coming, who would come out to the creek, and how we can sort of design some sort of programming too. Like how can we really hype up how beautiful and how amazing memories have been here. It's got to be about, and of course, this is all about, connections. This project really is about connections. Commissioner Edwards was sharing a story yesterday about, how am I going to get to Grandma's house? we could start to build corridors that cross over the creek to transform a path that might have been 40 minutes to walk all the way over to help grandma if she'd fallen down, and instead, have a 10-minute walk over the creek to really connect with the people you love for moments of joy. It has to be beautiful. It has to educate and empower the future, the youth and the seniors. It has to be respectful of everybody's needs. And we also have to recognize that quality of life and economic growth are linked to each other, and they're going to continue to sustain and feed a really positive cycle. We think that the revitalization of Ox Creek, and based on the conversations that we were having around the tables, this is a really important project and a really important thing for Benton Harbor to focus on if we are hoping for both quality of life improvements and the growth of the economy. I'm going to pass it to Greg.
So in the number of trips that we've been here and the kind of walking around, kind of getting down into the creek, riding around the city, hearing stories, we've identified at least a few spots that we think are critical spots in relationship to the development along the creek. And so this week, we kind of bracketed ourselves to kind of look at what's in the city. So from Hall Park down to Empire. But we also think the crossing at Brigham Avenue, which is the MLK Elementary School, is right at that corner, and the Tijuana Marie Floyd Memorial Bridge, which spans the creek, is a really important node in terms of access and in terms of exposure to the creek. It's one of the places that you can really see the full depth of the valley. You can really see the kind of qualities of space as you stop on that bridge and look over the edge. Along Valley Drive, a critical zone, which is just below that, Empire Avenue, which is a 1-acre crossing, and it's just half a block from the Project T site that Paul was talking about earlier and showed. So it's really in the heart of that commercial corridor of Empire, and also has the potential to be activated by growth. So just looking at it, thinking about the creek itself now as a park, not just as a creek and a ravine that's there for dumping to happen, but really how do you think about it as part of the park system and part of an activated recreational space? And again, this map is just showing really diagrammatically some of the sketches we started doing, which was just starting to pull adjacent properties, beginning to look at adjacent institutions that serve the community, but can have an incredible impact and utilize the creek as part of their mission. The Boys and Girls Club have Science Fridays. We can imagine a Science Friday afternoon where it's really about natural history. It's about the quality of water, learning all of the things that make up that system as an ecology. The MLK School, which is here at Britain, is really important in our minds kind of node, but also things that were there that aren't there right now, but the infrastructure is still there. The Armory, or what was most recently the Bobo Brazil Community Center. We think that should be reactivated as a youth center and tie it into the park really explicitly, which would make we should reorient the building a little bit, maybe flip its front door, or maybe give it a big bay window that looks onto the park. Maybe the space down below it gets co-opted by the park. There's a mural that can potentially cross over and look at make a connection directly in the park, so that when you're crossing Highland through activities, that it's really clear that there's a connection. But we just started doing this to kind of look at the whole. Let's go to the next one. If we just look at Hall Park, I mean, one of the things I think that's really amazing, and I love the presentations earlier and the whole idea about Make a Buck, and I love that you have to, I think, take care of that. But you also have to do things that support your community, that support the people that are already here. It can't just all be about giving and setting up things that are going to be aimed at people from Chicago. I mean, you need some things that are really for the people, for the everyday life of people who are living in the community and working in it, making that buck. And there are ways, I think, that the potential of things like Hall Park can foster that. The length of the creek, the programs and activities can help begin to empower everyone here. So we've been looking at a number of things, a lot of things that came up in our conversations, reactivating the Armory or the Brazil Youth Center, street murals that might slow down traffic but allow an expansion of the park and programming to cross over, where in the dead of winter you also might be using the indoor space more than you are the outside space for programming. But if you have them together, you could kind of expand those seasons one to the other. Adding a Wi-Fi system, a public Wi-Fi system, extending it through the park and providing nodes. Elevated walkway that probably has something like solar powered charging stations, which is also powering the Wi-Fi system that could be integrated into both providing the lighting along the path, new crossings and new access points, particularly from the neighborhoods on either side. Right now, Hall Park is quite porous already from the east side, but from the west side, the ravine really severs its relationship to that whole other side of the city and the park. It's just a steep ravine, which is really now a kind of ad hoc dumping ground. But we've heard stories or rumors that there was a crossing, there was a bridge at High Street. We think that that's a perfect spot. We've scouted it. We think there's some remaining infrastructure that's there, which of course would have to be evaluated with its structural stability, but we think that there's already support there for beginning to activate an accessible trail down, and then a potential crossing into the park. The same at Vineland. We think there's actually the slope is a little bit more gradual there. We think there's a really great opportunity to make a kind of interesting tree top walk through the canopy down into the creek and then crossing the creek, allowing you to get into the park and really connect those neighborhoods and provide those shortcuts between neighborhoods and connect those communities again. We think it's really important to think about Ox Creek in large as an outdoor classroom. We think that the youth of the community and the educational system that's running along it, from the number of schools there, it really could be activated as a learning opportunity. Understanding where a watershed is, understanding how water works, understanding plant life, understanding the kind of the seasonal changes that happen in the landscape. But we also think there's opportunities for explicit classrooms. We think that the trail might get thicker and more structured in places and allow for really explicit opportunities. At this end of the creek, just in terms of remediation, one of the things we think we have to do, we have to speed the water up. Right now, the water gets down here and it slows down, and so any sediment that's floating in that water is just starting to fall out, and that's what's causing the spreading and the flooding. The water's not getting through, so it's backing up. So at this end of the creek, the proposal right now is to narrow it slightly, allow a more expanded riparian buffer, but you'd be able to see the gradient of that whole water ecology across the lower plane of the site, and still not affect all of the programming activities that happen in the upper park. We think this park is primed for a kind of performance space, to have a permanent stage. There's a temporary one that's there that I heard stories from Commissioner Edwards about how it came to be. But we think a more permanent and more robust kind of stage, which is where we're dying to get, there you are, we're dying to get Devondre's talent show at an annual thing that shows up here, and it happens in the park and draws everyone from the community down into it. So it's really about leveraging resources and leveraging your existing assets, but amplifying them, letting them feed each other and build upon it. Let's go to the next one. A really quick sketch we did today, just looking at what an outdoor classroom might be. Could be a very simple structure. Solar powered, protects you from rain. That solar power could provide a charging station if you're riding your bike, or if you're just taking a walk and your phone's dying and you need someplace to kind of plug in. It could probably have a local Wi-Fi slot so you can tap into the local networks. I think there's all kinds of ways that these programs can double and serve kind of everyday functions and haphazard functions, but also really specific formal functions where MLK school might come down and have an actual class that happens literally in the creek. And so it's sheltered so that you can do it even in light rain or in snow, and see the kind of life of the creek throughout the year. Of course, it would all be accessible, which is a challenge because it is in a steep ravine, but there are plenty of ways that I think we can design a path and a trail that provide accessibility. So it's not just limited if you have, strong legs and, good health to get down there, but we could also have full access.
And I'd like to thank everyone again. I was producing this drawing today, but it was really only possible with you and your energy and your suggestions. I'm so inspired. It was so inspiring to hear. It was Jamario and Miguel who were sitting around the table, really trying to think about how can we empower the youth and how can we build along the creek to empower the youth. That is where ideas about experiential learning are coming from, and the charging stations. This has to be responsive, sensitive and responsive to technology as it continues to transform and evolve around the world and in your home. So thank you.
As we keep moving down the street, we're just gonna keep kind of strolling down the length of the creek. But as we're at the intersection where Britain crosses over across the Tuana Marie Floyd Bridge, this is the parking lot of the MLK school. This is a city-owned lot, and then this is the creek that here. There's the bridge, and there's such a great opportunity to make that connection right through there. Again, it's property that's already there. It's totally the term that I've learned over the past year in talking about this project. It is shovel ready. You're ready to go. The shovel can hit the ground tomorrow, and you can begin on this trail. Along that, again, the trail, we think there's plenty of opportunities to engage the creek and cross. This is a moment at this point in the creek where the old trail lines are really present. You can really see them. The infrastructure of there were two train lines. One was a regional train line that came into downtown, and the other was a train line that just served the local farms and brought produce in directly to the market. And those tracks, the tracks are gone, but the shape and the topography's there. And there's a spot right about in there, right about here, where two old bridges crossing where the train crossed the creek still exist. We think those could be fixed up and you could access them and easily be. They're strong enough you can see them. I walked across one about 3 weeks ago. It was very carefully, but it's there. It might need a little bit of support and a little bit of fixing up, but that infrastructure, that history is so important. How many of you knew that there was a train in the creek? People. Let's go on. So from the school, we're totally imagining also another opportunity to think about public art that you might think about when you have places like this where you want to cross the street at grade. What are the techniques and strategies we can deploy that give traffic the clues that they need to slow down here? So doing something really special on the street, even though you're going to drive across it, also makes a parade route that you can go all the way down into the creek bed. Some of these I've shown before, so these are things that we were already thinking about through analysis, but these were all reinforced when we got here through conversations and what that might look like from as you're coming across the bridge. There's the school, the creek is down over on this side. And then we were also, like everyone underscored, it's got to be beautiful. Right now, the creek is ugly. There are moments when you look in the right direction and you can block out some of the garbage and trash. But it is a really magical space when you get down in it. You don't feel like you're in a city anymore. You feel like you're in an oasis. It's just remarkable. This is under the bridge. The bridge is tall enough here, the path would go right under. But we also think this is almost like an impromptu pavilion in itself. So we could expand that and make that a classroom. It could be a gathering space. It'd be lit underneath. It would also be lined with, we think, with murals. We'd make that, instead of feeling like you're just hiding under the bridge, we'd make that a destination that you want to go see. Valley Drive is a whole different set of problems. It's not shovel ready. It needs a bit more work. There's a lot of contamination that happened from harbor plating, which is just up the hill. We know a lot about that yet. There's still some things to understand in terms of the extent of contamination, but that's all underway. Part of an EPA grant that Eagle just received to help do further assessment of that. But there's already groundwater pumping. None of the pollutants or contaminants from that are actually getting into the creek. We know that already. It's already contained. The pollutants aren't affecting you as you engage the creek at this point. But there is. This become a local dump. I mean, it's shocking when you get down there and see it. It really, Paul described it as something that he got angry when he saw it the first time.
Yes.
And this actually is kind of, you can't even quite see how rough it is. We kind of tried to catch the photo, but it's down, it's a 23-acre site in the center of the city. You know, it's waiting to be activated. We just have to figure out the kind of steps, and that's what we're going to be doing over the next few months. And then as you get down to Empire, we think that there's a really great opportunity with land that you already own to begin to shore up. And maybe that's a place where you have a concession stand where you rent cross-country skis and you get a city bike and you go and you ride out. We think there's lots of opportunities at this intersection. And just right, it's this side. Just right here is the Project T development, the Mercy Hospital site. So we know that there's going to be more activity and more city residents here that can engage that and activate it. That's just a shot, just looking, we're kind of looking, that this is the actual creek crossing right here. It's really at grade, it's kind of a narrow spot, but there's interesting kind of flat zones on either side, which we think could be interestingly activated, and also produce that potential of the kind of mural in the street kind of effect of slowing down traffic and allowing bikes to pass or pedestrians to cross, or school classes to go through and protect them. Something that might begin to make a kind of almost plaza, a kind of natural plaza within the forest. Just another view of it. But when you get off of the street there, which you got to figure out, you got to do a little bit of work to do that. But as soon as you get going in there, it's like a little, you're in a little green bubble. It's amazing. But the stream is quite small. The plant life is actually quite good. There's a lot of invasive species still, but there's a lot of really good native species that you can begin to see emerging right now this time of year. And it's a really beautiful space. It's intimate, it's narrow. We think the trail might have a very different character as it moves through here. And then just further out, and I'll just touch on these quickly. These are things that are coming. We're going to start looking at, we're coming back a few more times this summer. But the Sorter Elementary School site was part of Sorter Farm, we learned, and the field behind its backyard was all the way, the tree line is really almost a creek. And when you get in there, that is where like things are really incredible. It's just like a magical spot. The creek is beautiful there. It kind of winds through the plant life. There's really beautiful low plant life, and then the trees. You have that kind of space where you get the kind of tree canopy and you can see the kind of low vegetation without the kind of scrubbiness that happens in between. And then eventually out toward Napier, but we also think it's got to go further. So just a couple things. What we do as designers, we've been taking, this is what we did last night after we had our meetings yesterday. We spent all day doing this. We start looking for, listening to your stories and looking within them for things that are overlapping. Where do we build density? Where do we build coincidence between how something can do multiple things? Because with limited resources, everything you do has to have maximum impact. It has to do at least 3 things, and it has to do it where everybody can see it and know something's going on. So we're thinking those first few moves, and this is what we do as designers. We start looking for those things. We start building connections that aren't obvious when you first think of them, but we find ways to bring them together. And so we will go through that. We'll start getting much more specific about what's happening, about talking with you and getting you ideas, developing more specificity in these diagrams. And then we'll be back. This is just the first for us. We wanted to take advantage of this week because the master planning efforts coinciding with the efforts for Ox Creek. Ox Creek has to respond to what is being planned for the future of the city. We can't just design for what's there now. We have to know both what's there now, but also what's coming. And so we're thinking adaptively that way and going to help kind of marshal that process through and working together with Candace's team and all of you, develop a thing that gets incorporated and adopted as part of the master plan.
Our charge for the next phases of this project are to really learn from projects of maybe similar scales or similar contexts or similar histories or like challenges that they're facing. We'll be learning from these other projects. This is by no means an exhaustive list. We're going to have to look at more and more. But here we're going to be looking at these and having conversations as well, and kind of identify certain approaches or strategies or timelines or steps that we can take to keep this work rolling.
Yeah, it's important. I mean, Ox Creek isn't the first stream that has been screwed up by development and urbanization. So we have there's lots of examples. We're going to try to learn from those, try to bring them and put them in front of you so you can see what was successful, maybe what was challenging, what things were did those project leaders encounter in terms of obstacles and hurdles? How long did they take? How long is this project going to take? All of those things we have to work through. How do we implement it? What are the stages? What comes first? What comes second? Those are the next kind of things that we'll be working through. And presenting that all back to you. And again, in the short term, we have a number of things coming up. We've talked to a couple of Commissioner Henderson. We're going to come and visit her class this summer, who just over the past couple of weeks put together an amazing list of what her students want for the city. And so we want to talk to them firsthand and get their ideas about the creek and the relationship of the creek to the city, and engage them and talk to them about what the possibilities are in terms of thinking in that way. But how do you think as a designer? How do you think? What would it be like to be an architect or a planner, and begin to plant those seeds early? We're also going to we have a meeting with stakeholders that we've set up, and we also have a meeting that we're setting up with a senior, a targeted group of senior citizens, so that we're really trying to get stories and find venues where you feel comfortable telling your stories to us. So we're going to be coming out to you. We're not going to be in rooms like this. We're going to be setting up where you live. We're going to be setting up in your parks. We're going to be setting up in the community. We're hoping for we're planning what we're calling Ox Creek Day, for lack of a better word right now. But we're gonna set up in Hall Park. We'll all be there. We'll be talking about the plans, and we're gonna have food. There's gonna be music. It's gonna be a great time. So stay tuned. Over the summer, we're gonna pepper you with questions and with information, and we're rolling. So we're super excited to be there. And again, just thank you so much. We love hearing stories. We think it's going to be amazing.
Yes.
My name is Betty Yarborough, and I'd like to welcome you all to my district. I'm Berrien County Commissioner.
Yes.
And I didn't have any paper, and so as you were talking, I was writing notes, and I asked you all to bear with me. This is my home. I've lived here all my life, and I want to let you know that there's Javis, the factory that's right on Territorial. Have you looked at Ox Creek there?
We've walked it. We haven't studied it yet.
But it wasn't moving, just like across the street, and it's rolling.
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't know it would move like that, so they did some work.
Yeah.
I want to let you know that on Valley Drive, Berrien County had some money to get rid of raggedy places that had been there for a long time. And we took some buildings, demolished some buildings back there.
Yep.
So I want to know, are you all in touch with Berrien County, some department?
Not yet, but we will be reaching out to you to find out
Okay,
more about that.
we
We have been in conversation with the drain commissioner.
Okay, first country.
Yeah, Chris Quatrain. We've been talking with him about plans that they have that have already been put in place for cleanup along the creek.
Okay, and Jill Adams, she's the director of parks.
I have not talked to Jill.
Trails, Marcy knows. Yeah, so bring us in.
Marcy's been working with.
But one thing we didn't say, and I want you to know about, is we had a roller skating rink that was open 7 days a week, 24 hours. They had midnight skating, they had birthday parties.
Awesome.
And it's probably on 3rd or 4th Street. The Armory is here. And there might be some kind of building, and the next vacant lot was where the roller skating rink was, and it was long, like that lot was. It wasn't that wide, but it was long. And so roller skating is what we do. Somebody came to one of those people that took us over and made us an ice skating rink. He didn't ask anybody, do you want to ice skate? And he bought skates, we don't know where they are. He bought them, he took them, they was disappeared, because we had no ice skates. but 70, 80-year-old people roller skate. And that's something you should look at for sure. It's one of the things that you can connect.
It is. I didn't know that there was one there. This was a conversation that came up yesterday, the idea of a roller skating rink in the summer and turning it into an ice skating rink in the winter. And Todd's been really important reminding us that snow is important. at the
Roller
time of
skating.
the
Yeah, it was. It was like all year round. It really was a big.
Said it's been the
I
wrong
remember, see, I remember there's some of the stuff she goes on, but it's funny.
I think I'm gonna, fast forward. We've got another question here.
Well, not actually, I got actually a question and actually as far as comments. Actually, let me go as far as with my comments. First, I think that this, the master plan and all that, this sounds really good. You know, and all that. I mean, that's great. That's great. Love it. But I want to add, my question would be, I'm gonna do first my question. No, let me go ahead and do my comments, then my question. And I'm just telling you what I gathered from the presentation so far. What I looked at is that it sounds good, but I also have some concerns. One of those is, and this is what I see, is a possible gentrification. I see that, and I'm saying, how do we eliminate that? Another thing was, I think the gentleman here talked about earlier about some of the concerns that the citizens have. And one of the things that I want to be, I want to be sensitive to and respect is that what they said is real in reference to the institutional racism and how. And see, I'm not even from here. I'm just going to tell you from the outsider point, from an outsider's perspective, and from what I see. You got Benton Harbor and St. Phil, and they call themselves twin cities, but they're really evil twins because they don't get along or whatever. So there is some institutional racism that is involved. Because I know one of the things he talked about was about Whirlpool. Well, my thing was like this: Whirlpool might be a jewel and all that, and people don't have, people have their opinions about whatever Whirlpool is, good or bad. But one of the things that because he said it was it's a good thing to have. But one of the things that I would suggest is using Whirlpool basically to lead in the change in terms of the investment here. They've been sitting up here for how long? How they came up to any other companies and say, y'all know what? Why don't y'all invest? Why don't y'all come here in our city as far as in Benton Harbor and stuff like that? I haven't heard that. The other, and let's see, like I said, possible gentrification. Oh, and another thing that I didn't hear in the plans was in respecting culture, both neighborhood culture as well as the city's culture. Because everybody, Chicago, I ain't gonna even go about Chicago. I ain't gonna say can't stand Chicago. They just not my favorite. They're just like, they're my rival cities. I'll just put it like that. So I ain't gonna say nothing else about Chicago. But I'm just saying in reference to that, they even have where they, as far as they have their neighborhood culture as well as their city culture. And I see some of this as like eliminating that. And so we need to, as far as to maintain it. And then another thing, which I'm sure everybody I ain't gonna say everybody, but in this region, you still need an adequate transportation system here and all that. And you know what that's gonna take? That's gonna take as far as you're talking about millages, you're talking about legislatures and legislative action and so forth and so on. Because it doesn't matter how many businesses you get along here. If people can't get to work, what does it all mean? People and businesses are not going to invest, and trust me, I know, because I'm from a big city. And one of the things that they have said, because we was trying to get a great big corporation to come to the city. And one of the things that they said was two things. They said, first of all, the city was not diverse. And they were talking about the transportation system. And I just thought about this not too long ago. We live in Michigan, where we have the big three. The last thing that should not be a barrier in Michigan is transportation. And then I'm gonna leave you with this and then I'm gonna shut up, and this was my question. The gentleman had indicated that there was a master plan and all. So I want that there was a master plan back when, I guess you say when you were coming up or whatever. So what I want to know is what happened to that master plan? What has been implemented? What were some things from the master plan? And what were some things that have been implemented? And how far, and maybe, because I don't believe in reinventing the wheel. So I'm just trying to, if anybody know what has happened in reference to the last master plan and has there been anything from that master plan? What came out from the last master plan? And so, that's it. That's all I got to say.
I would say your comments and your questions, those are all good thoughts, and they're similar to what we've heard this week. I do want to note that we're going to kind of stop the presentation because we actually had more we wanted to talk about, but I don't think we're going to have time to get it because this event is scheduled to 9 tonight, and we are streaming. We got people watching online right now, so I also want to be respectful of their time. So I do want to give some time to this comment. We did do presentations earlier this week, presenting some, background statistics. We presented some in-depth analysis, not just about the 2011 plan, but plans from the 1950s, 1980s. And really what planning is it evolves over time. Every time you do a master plan or any type of plan, you got to look back at all the recommendations before and pull those good ideas forward. A lot of times what I say is some of the good ideas from the past, they are still living and waiting for the time to come out. And that's the attitude we're bringing to this process. If we want to find all of those good ideas and find the time for them to live, find the day in the sun. So we have been working on that. Some of the ideas maybe are new. We're talking about this Parks and Boulevard system. We're talking about Ox Creek as a catalyst project. And all of the things that are relevant today. I do want to comment on gentrification. We know that, I presented earlier in the session that Todd referenced and was talking today, in 1960, there were twice as many people in Benton Harbor. A population of almost 20,000 people, today almost 10,000. That is, for a region of this size, major shrinkage, and that has put shrinkage in population. That is what has put all the stresses on the city system. And as we talk about more people, we have to make sure that those people are diverse, that there's opportunities for more Black people to move here, more Latino, Hispanic people to move here, and more Caucasian people to move here too, right? And we can do these things as a city, if we make sure legacy residents are protected, that neighborhoods are the leaders, and that opportunities for current homeowners and Benton Harbor residents that wanted to own homes are created, right? The problem with gentrification is displacement of culture, displacement of people. That has not happened in Benton Harbor yet, and with planning, with leadership, it won't happen, okay? So I agree, and everyone I've talked to agree with your concerns, agree with the comments that you made tonight. Everyone is yes. There's nobody that disagrees with these concerns that I have talked to. Nobody. All right? And they've come up at every meeting. And we'll keep talking about it, we'll keep hearing these concerns because protecting Benton Harbor residents is what matters. And I'm sure there are many other people that would talk to this point better than me. But I'm the person that's just answering this question now. I'm sure there's everybody in this room has something to say about it, right? I hope that's my response. I don't know if it's the response you wanted, but that's what I got right now. And so let's do some questions. I would like to ask, let me just do a quick time check. I would like to say we had a lot of stuff all around the room. You see goals, objectives, strategies. After we stop the stream tonight, we want to keep taking that information. So please give us more feedback on the goals, objectives, and strategies. We didn't get to our retail summary, but we were going to share all of the potential for new retail in the city, which we had talked about, the market to support the types of development that Todd was talking about, the assets in this community. Market is big and it's real. And the people who benefit from this this, the economic market are the city residents. But we have to be accountable. We have to be accountable and work with people. Let's give it to the mayor. Mayor, will you make our closing remarks, please?
Yes, so I just want to talk a little bit about gentrification.
Yes, please.
So genocide, side is the key. Gen is race. So genocide is to kill a race of people systematically, institutionally, etc. To gentrify, what does that mean? And what does that look like? We saw it through urban renewal. In big cities right now, they say that the top 5 cities, one is San Francisco, Oakland, California. So they're saying that through the development of the Golden State Warriors, moving to San Francisco has helped to gentrify the area. Number 2 is Denver. When I went to Denver, my daughter graduated from Regis, downtown, 16th Street. They had scooters all over the place, restaurants going up, business development, but it was probably the capital of homelessness. But the thing that I saw, it wasn't just affected Black people, but it was white, poor. Number 4, Miami, Fort Lauderdale in Florida, where it's a total boom. New Orleans, of course, we know Hurricane Katrina was probably the greatest component to start and speed up the process of gentrification. In fact, one educational scholar said what they tried to do in eliminating the public school system for 30 years, through Hurricane Katrina, they were able to do it in like 3 years. So what's happening here in Benton? How do we, in this room and outside of this room, how do we balance the fact that you got 2 people in the room? You got the person with the idea, and then you have the person with the money. Because if you got just somebody with great ideas in the room, but no money, then the ideas stay sitting on the shelf. So how do we bring money and marry money and wealth with the redevelopment of the city of Benton without pushing out a race of people, poor people? And how do we make this inclusive? Through compromise, through government. Because it's going to take private money, it's going to take public. It's going to take both, private sector, public sector, working together with people in the neighborhood. Nobody's going to get exactly what they want. But what I do know is, what I see out there today cannot be sustained. So it's going to take a lot of work from us. And I don't mean to preach. I ain't going to pass my hat. But I've been in this city. I came back from Chicago, DePaul University. And when I walked in government, the state was taking over. Because they said we were unfit to govern ourselves. Along with the decline and dilapidation and all of that, I worked with 3 governors, many city council persons, county commissioners. I worked at the high school. I'm selling cars now. But I'm committed to transforming this city. But I know it's going to take money. I know it's going to take wealth. But it's going to take organization and unity by those in this community to say, look, we want you to develop. We want you to bring your wealth. We want you to be part of the redevelopment of this city.
and rebuilding the city. But we're not going to allow you to move us. That's
Well, okay, let me do a time check, all right? It's 8:57. We were committed to go to 8. Does anyone else want to make a closing remark? All right, you know what would be fun? Some discussion here. Rich?
This is a question. We've been working to try to synthesize some of these things that are on those post-its, and hours of conversation with everyone who dropped in over the last few days, and it's sitting right there. But this is 9 o'clock.
Yeah.
And we've all been at it. It's 9 this morning, and this is the 4th day. We need to find out, how are we going to present this? Because the answers to some of these questions came out in all these conversations that we had, and some of it was right there for discussion. So we all need to come back fresh.
Can you go over a few minutes?
No.
Well, what if we just talk about the goal? We end with Rich's idea. We said 9. Let's stick to 9. I agree. Commissioner Edwards?
Yeah, I disagree with Richard. I've been here the whole week. And there was a couple questions that he asked about is social culture getting eliminated. And we went over that. And no, actually, we're increasing by a plan that we're using, as he was saying, in our street for the Park Boulevard.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, there's a lot of questions that we went over. We answered a lot of questions we went over, and we still need more conversation. But as you say, yeah, we do need a time to answer those questions. Because if we don't, then it makes frustrating how we really know what we're doing. So yes, we do need a time for all those questions to put down, and then we just spend that time just to answer. And then we can start over.
I love this conversation too, because the good news is we've been talking about a series of neighborhood workshops that we're planning. We also know we've got Peace Day tomorrow. We're gonna go out and talk more at Peace Day. And then we're gonna do a debrief tomorrow afternoon, hopefully at City Hall, and we can answer this question. We can figure out when we wanna do this. And even sooner than that, we can do a webinar, right? We've been using YouTube to get this movie out. We've been using YouTube to get the information and to help people engage. We're gonna continue to do that, right? So we can do a webinar version of our presentation, and then we can follow up in person. We plan to be back on Juneteenth as well. Deandre and I will be networking, and anyone else from the team hopefully will be out here talking about the plan. Continuing to provide opportunities to engagement through the website, bestbentonharbor.com, where you can find all of the presentations from this week. You can find streaming versions of all the information. So if you want more information, for instance, on some of the questions that come up, watch what happened earlier this week, because we're going to continue to get information out this way. Todd.
So one of the things that.
And let's plan a public hearing that takes place at City Hall with the City Commission.
Yeah, that would be great. Let's do a presentation with it. Let's confirm tomorrow when we might want to do that with the City Commission, because I want the City Commissioners' input on that too. Let's see.
I would like to see a whole lot more citizen input before we go to City Hall.
There we go. Well,
A
that's a
whole
good
lot
point.
more.
And we are planning this, right?
But before you present it to City Hall, I want to make sure that Benton Harbor residents that are actually involved in giving you comments.
Now, I hear you. So we had a couple conflicting viewpoints about what we should do next. That's why we should talk about it, because you're right. We need to make that decision on what's best for the commission. And I agree. Todd, you had a
More
comment.
communication is better than less. And this presentation is about a conversation.
Where did the conversation come from?
From hours and hours over 4 days.
Like who were there here doing the conversation?
Me.
Well, I know you was. I can count 6. I can count at least 6
Deandre.
officials in the building.
Let's come together.
So I just want to share a few things and then can really add to some of the different conversations that's happening really quick. Just a comment I want to share. So when I first talked to Paul and he reached out to me about joining the team, I'm originally born and raised in Benton Harbor. I told you 2 years ago, I had no clue there was a master plan going. And so I too automatically have, I think something culturally embedded in me that has a immediate mistrust. I would love to hear your presentation, but hold on. That has an immediate, that has, I have an immediate mistrust of governance. There's tons of stories, right? I've seen the riots. My father, the first time I've ever seen him on TV and the only time was after the riots. So I'm sharing that I too have some of the sentiments of where's the culture going to be? And so when I had my first conversation with Paul, us talking, I told him if I was going to join the team, I wanted to make sure that I wasn't representing something that I wouldn't put my name on, right? That I wouldn't go to my grandmother who still stays here, my grandfather who still stays here, and say I believe in this plan. And so that being said, from the moment we've talked, I said communication was the #1 issue, I believe. If I could put it in one simple sentence, I think that this master plan is a big vision for 10 years, but there's a lot of citizens out here who have immediate needs. And so it's hard to talk about how we're going to build a farm in 5 years when I'm hungry right now. And so I believe that being the #1 issue I see in my mind, right, when it comes to making a master plan that everybody agrees with, one of the solutions I've shared and I'm working on is the things that you asked. Every citizen is going to ask that. So we've had multiple conversations, like you guys have said, and there was a lot of people who weren't there. And so when a new person walks in the room and they see this information, we're going to start over. We're going to say, yo, what happened to the last plan? We're going to say, and so because of that, I believe the solution is not a webinar of 60 minutes, and we've talked about this, but a video that's very concise. What were the last couple of master plans? How do we want to? How are we going to make sure that we're going to keep the culture in the city if we actually do this? And not just, hey, here's what we're going to do, but actually matching it with the master plan so they can see and hold you accountable to it, right? Taking these names like Ox Creek, I had no clue we had it. I went to MLK Academy as a 9th grader, and I walked past it every day. I had no clue there was anything called a creek over there, right? So I just think that if we have great information, it's how we disseminate it, which is really going to change whether we can get to a place of, we all want the same thing, it's just the communication here is lacking, and we need a little bit more technology to scale the conversations we're having. So citizen who's starting at step 1 say, hey, a master plan, and the citizen who's like, I'm on the city commission and I want to make decisions, we're all able to catch up on information when we want to, right? I don't watch the NBA a lot, but the Golden State Warriors are still playing. I don't watch the games because I don't have time, but I go to YouTube and catch up on it. We need to put this in a way that citizens in Bar Harbor, in their immediate stage, can still catch up on things when they're ready and when they want to. And so that's something I'm passionate about, and I'm just letting you guys know that that's
Also, that's why I said movie earlier, because the Ivanka's working on a movie.
But what, like, basically what everybody has said and what was your name?
The Ivanka.
I think it's different. But what I just noticed from being here today, right, was that people would come in at different points, starting the conversation over, or and things of that nature. So how are, especially those that want to be a part of it, when are you going to come? And then if you still, even that video, that's still going to be showing they've already done something, and people say, well, how did they decide that? These meetings are, like, I literally just got back like yesterday morning, I had to do some stuff. My uncle just died this morning, but I still came. Some of them haven't even went to lunch, and that's the whole of the conversation, right? In regards to, we have time for what we want, but then people pop in at different points and like, oh, what about this? Well, that was yesterday morning, really, but they've been kind, and it has been a repeat of conversations when people stop in for 10 minutes or whatever they do, and it's just like we have to be honest and be accountable for how vested we are in our own communities. And I mean, everybody can. I've had flyers. I gave them out as a little scam bar, and that's how I follow it. You click on it and see what it changed to the location. They did all of that. You know what I'm saying? And so where's our accountability? We have to still be honest with that, because we can't not do nothing and wait for everybody to be on the same page. But I want everybody to. I agree with that. But what I'm saying is, like, this has been a long week, right? Of meetings in the mornings. People have maybe had an hour break. That's that. So what about that? And people have done what they wanted to do. We have to be a part of things and for the long haul, not one day, not 10 minutes, but start to finish, because it's different vantage points that were being addressed all week. And I don't know if we've all showed up on it.
Well, and to build on this comment, right? The importance of this project, it does not rise and fall in meetings. It's not about meetings, right? Meetings is when we get together, but it's the conversations we have between the meetings, right? That's the rise and fall of this project. It's the information we learn and then how we share it. Are we willing to be representatives of this process? Are we willing to be ambassadors, right? That's how we will create a plan. That's how I think. Commissioner Reed says, speak for mine. That's how I think we will get a good plan. I think we will get a good plan if we all challenge ourselves to be ambassadors.
May I ask, because I think it's super late, because I didn't know about it, I'm an educator in the community, so how was it circulated? Like how the information about the master plan? Because again, I'm a leader in the community, and I show up for my community, but again, if I don't know about it, I can't show up. And I'm advocating for people, because I think that there is a lack of communication system for inner city people who want to be here. I can name 10 people right now who would have loved to have been here and heard the ideas and things like that, but again, information. How do we circulate?
So we've done all folks. This has been the most widely publicized charrette I have ever been a part of. Ever been a part of.
When we're talking about inner city.
Yeah, well, so, and we've been doing community organizing type techniques too. We've made lots of flyers. Commissioner Edwards has probably 500 flyers at the Boxing Parade, right? A very popular event. We've been at the opening for the Welcome Center. We've been at multiple city commission meetings, and city commission meetings are well attended, right? That's agenda packets, public postings. We have made calls, emails, utilized every network we have. Those have been shared. People have been forwarding advice. And, you know, front page of Spirit News, front page of the Herald Palladium, on the news. Nick had us on his radio show. Thank you, Nick. I mean, everything we can do, but we need to do more, and that's the individual, right? That's the I. I'm asking people to be ambassadors. I am making ask. I am asking to be an ambassador of this process. Reed, you want to say something? Commissioner Reed.
I've been very quiet. Haven't had nothing much to say. Why? I've been listening. I listened. 52 weeks. This is just the first week. We're gathering information. No decisions have been made about anything. The citizens will have their day. I told them from the very beginning. 3 categories: housing, riverfront, downtown, and harbor. We are still gathering information. Already we've been accused of not adhering to the Open Meetings Act before we even had a meeting. And you are accusing us of rubber stamping. Rubber stamp what? This is the only thing I've seen so far. Let the process work. Come together. We want to work together. You want to divide us? Do what you've been doing. Let's work together. Put the problem on the table. Every voice in the room has to be heard about the problem. Stop fighting with each other. I don't have to spank somebody.
All right, Todd, you've been waiting a long time. Please.
So I really appreciate what everyone said, and I opened my remarks by saying we are ready, right? So we have to make sure that people that aren't at the table are at the table. And as he said, no decisions have been made. And so it's imperative that we, once we have converge to a plan that we believe in, that we were to implement. I think the question was asked, what happened to some of the previous master plans? And maybe one of the things that happened was that it didn't have not only people buying into the plan, but people committed to executing the plan. So that's what we want to do. Also, really need to discuss a new city hall. How could that benefit the citizens? What other kinds of things to go on? I mean, the city hall that we have now is completely inadequate. And so, again, as has been said, many cities may need a new city hall. So I know that we can necessarily raise our hand and say, buy us or build us a new city hall, Mr. Mann. But we do need a new city hall, and so we need to have that conversation and determine what that could look like, whether it's mixed retail, whether it's a combination of a residence and city hall on second and third floor. That's to be determined. But the new city hall, how it could better serve the citizens of Ben Harbor needs to be on the table.
Thank you. And Mr. Mayor.
So, as far as the last master plan was done under emergency management. So, there was a vote. I voted against it. It was a split 5-4 vote. And Mayor Cook at the time was the deciding vote because he knew that a city with no master plan, his plan was a failure. He knew that at a certain point we could amend it once we can get past control of the state. And then home rule will kick back in and people can get involved. Prior to that, I read some of the plans that were in place under Mayor Wolf. And it's strikingly interesting because there was a lot of great ideas, but the money never came in. So all those great, it mentions Ox Creek, it mentions a lot of the things we're talking about today, but the bottom line was it takes money to make things happen. And I'm gonna ask it again. Can this be done without money? I'm asking. So how again do we engage those who have the money to help us? And lastly, me politics has destroyed it, which amongst a lot of other things. But what can you do for me is how a lot of our politics and how we make decisions and how we view, let's change it from me to we. And what's best for the whole, which may not, be for me per se, but if the whole benefits, then it'll be something.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you. So, yeah, our purpose was to get ideas, 30% ideas, so that then we can test the ideas, right? That's what the next year is about. I want to thank everybody for your time. We've gone a little past our time. We got kids falling asleep. We got to let's continue this conversation as we kind of mingle out. I really appreciate the energy, dedication that I've seen this week, and I know we're going to see so much more. As Kay said, it was so inspiring, right? Inspiring to hear.
I hope everyone keeps bringing the magic to this, and yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody. Appreciate it.
A couple questions to get to. Oh, you wait on camera?
No,
Oh, logistics.